was talking to a group of young people several months ago in Omaha, Nebraska at a lecture demonstration for my company, BANDALOOP. And at the back of the crowd, a 12-year-old boy who was slouching leaned forward and raised his hand. And he asked, "But why do you dance on walls?" Now, people must have asked me this question before, but there was something about the directness of his question. In thinking about it, it's inspired me to articulate my process and the motivation for doing what I do. I think it's a process in a general sense that we all go through, a creative process. It's a progression of learning and behavioral change that leads to openness, possibility, inventiveness. And his question was a reasonable one when going to work looks like this, or like this, or like this. And what's going on inside my brain when I'm going to work like that, not always, but still to this day, is sort of danger, danger, alert, alert. What is she thinking? Abort, abort. I've been a dancer since I was 3 or 4 years old when I first put on French cafe music in my parents' living room and made them all come in and watch me perform. I've been training ferociously since high school, or especially back in high school and college. I had such discipline. Not that I don't still, but it wasn't until I moved to California that I realized my artistic path. I was studying comparative religion and performance in Berkeley when I first climbed in the Sierra, and I fell in love with that experience. That passion, that new passion, I was wondering, how could I bring together the world, that new passion, with my old passion, the worlds of climbing and dance? What would it look like if you brought those two worlds together? And that's when I founded, shortly after, my company, BANDALOOP. BANDALOOP's mission is to celebrate the power and vulnerability of natural spaces like Yosemite. It's to reimagine what dance can be and where it takes place. It brings dance to new audiences, large and diverse. In the last several years alone, we've performed all over the world for probably over 100,000 people. It's also about, because we use this technique, which you'll see in a moment, where we change the dance floor and turn it on its side, it's about transforming the viewer's perspective on the relationship between movement and gravity, and hopefully inspiring curiosity, maybe even transformation. Let me give you a little taste of what it looks like. I learned to climb in the Sierra, and many of my experience, I was lucky enough to be inspired by and get to climb with some of California's best climbers, mostly in the 90s, was sort of my heyday, from obscure backcountry routes, from, let's say, a Galen Rao route on Split Mountain to classics in Yosemite Valley in the high country. I even got into sport climbing, both indoors and out, and had a stint competing nationally in the mid-90s. What matters to me about climbing is something very particular to the mountains. Why do we go to the mountains? To be humbled, to feel awe, to be reminded of the importance of our relationship to those natural spaces, to have fun, to be challenged. And many of these are the same reasons that people climb, but what's unique to climbing is the intense focus it demands. When you're climbing, for example, especially on lead, there's something that can happen. So being on lead, for those of you who don't know, is when you're going first, you're bringing the rope up with you, you're placing the pieces of protection, and you're climbing above them. And there you are, above your last piece of protection, and suddenly, you don't feel so good. Your hands start to feel a little clammy, and you don't feel like you can hold on anymore, and your foot starts to do this. We call it sewing machine, and you have a rising sense of panic, and you're sure you're going to fall, and in that moment, something amazing can happen. You can notice the sky. You can feel the breeze. You see a lizard right next to you mocking your anxiety by doing push-ups. And you notice you haven't been breathing for the last minute or so, and you exhale. And in that moment, you move on, and you climb on, and you find a way, and that sequence of holds that was eluding you suddenly is right there in front of you. It was after an experience like that, high in the Sierra, somewhere in Tuolumne Meadows on a golden granite ridge, that I first had the idea of bringing together dance and climbing. I thought, what would dance look like here? What would happen if you brought together the technology of climbing and the technique and artistry of dance? Well, for one thing, this is what your backstage might look like. And up there, it's really, really quiet, except for the wind. Very unlike being on a skyscraper, a bridge, or a theater all over the world with hundreds of people. It's really different. It's a very personal experience. That personal experience and climbing in the mountains brought me to what are my favorite dance experiences I've ever had. One of them has to do with the peregrine falcon. The piece we did in 1997 to celebrate the return of the peregrine was called Peregrine Dreams. In this piece, we climbed El Capitan as a group of 6 for 6 days and 5 nights to make the work. We climbed capsule style, which means you bring your ropes with you and there's nowhere to go but up. And on the vast ocean of beautiful, sparkling granite, we got to do the piece. And only later did no one was there. Maybe a photographer, but no one was there. And later I heard that there was a group of tourists in the meadow wondering, why do those climbers have wings? Another piece that was my favorite dance experience was one called Crossing, where we started near Bridgeport, California, and crossed over the Sierra about 70, 80 miles, 18 days. We took our time making dances along the way. And the centerpiece was near Glen Ullin on Wildcat Point, where this picture is taken. Recently, we restaged Crossing, in fact, just last summer. So I thought I would give you a little taste of what that looked like. I know I'm not an illustrator. Back to the kids' question, why do I dance on walls? It's because it makes me uncomfortable, but in a good way. And it's that discomfort that is part of a process that takes me to what I'm really doing, which for me as an artist is redefining dance, finding inventiveness, changing perspectives. But this process, like the one I talked about before, this progression of learning, is something that we all go through. And it strips away everything extraneous so that all that's left is something very precious. Being totally present. Why is that precious? Ask any Buddhist monk or surgeon, elite athlete or inventor. It's because it enables you to do something potentially extraordinary. It is a portal to possibility. People think, many people at least, think I'm a daredevil, that I am a death-defying thrill seeker who does it for the rush of the adrenaline. And yeah, that's a door, but it's a door to what I'm really doing, which is finding that moment of presence. What the eminent psychologist and popular TED speaker, Csikszentmihalyi, who studies happiness, what he calls flow. That's what I'm after, and I think we can all have going through that kind of a process. And many people think that you get there, you make magic, art is sort of like making magic or it's alchemy or something, but no, it's actually a process that has key elements. And one of those key elements is constraints. For us, those constraints come in the form of our rigging practices and safety culture, which we spend a lot of time thinking about, and over the years we're refined. We work with the finest climbers and riggers in California. Another one is the constraint that is artistic. So for example, if you want to do something creative and you're like, I'm going to do anything, you have no idea where to start and where you're headed. So you need constraints, you need a problem to solve. The second key element, we practice a lot, we rehearse. That's a key element in this process, simply doing something over and over again. That's how you get to a place where what was once extraordinary can become ordinary, but in a good way. Trying to do something that's really difficult, trying to accomplish something that's almost impossible, let's say like dancing gracefully at 12,000 feet in the Himalayan mountains, as in this photo near Nanda Devi, or 2,900 feet up on a cliff like Mount Watkins, finding grace there. Trying to do that is not, it's about making the extraordinary ordinary in a good way. It's about going through that process of constraints and practice. It's about finding a way to make that which is extraordinary possible. And I think it's a process we all can do. What is your edge? What's your door? What's your portal? What's something that makes you uncomfortable, but in a good way? That discomfort that can lead to the progression of learning, behavioral change that takes you somewhere. What is it for you? Do something with me right now if you would. We're going to do something together, okay? Close your eyes. I'm going to close my eyes too. Close your eyes. We're going to hold our breath for 20 seconds. Ready? Inhale. Exhale. Open your eyes. Thank you.